Hello ladies, and welcome back to another episode of Geometry. Today we're going to be doing circumcenters and orthocenters. Remember, a circumcenter is where the perpendicular bisectors cross, and in a triangle, you have a nice triangle here. Okay, a perpendicular bisector would go through a midpoint and be perpendicular to that side. So what we're going to do is find the midpoint. Okay, and then we're going to find the equation of a line that's perpendicular to the side through that point. So I'm going to start step 1, and if you have your set of steps that you copied from the other day, go ahead and get those out. Okay, that's something you're going to want to look over as we're doing this to make sure you understand each step and you can follow it on your own later. So for number 1, we're going to go ahead and find the midpoint of AB and AC. The midpoint of AB will have 4 plus 14 over 2 and 12 plus 6 over 2. And then for the midpoint of AC, which I'll call N, we'll do 4 minus 6 over 2 and 12 plus 2 over 2. This one will reduce to 9, 9, or 18 over 2. And this one will reduce to negative 1, 7. Negative 2 over 2 and 14 over 2. Step 2, okay, it says to find the slope of the same side. So I want to find the slope of AB and the slope of AC. So for AB, I subtract my x's, 12, or my y's rather, 12 minus 6 over 4 minus 14. Make sure you keep them in the correct order. This will be 6 over negative 10, which is negative 3/5. And then the slope of AC will be 12 minus 2 on the top over 4 minus negative 6 on the bottom, which is 10 over 10. Which is the same as positive 1. So now we have step 2 completed. So 1 and 2 are pretty short steps. There are some calculations involved, but it's a lot of things you've done many times at this point. For step 3, we have to find the negative reciprocal. We want to find the perpendicular slope for AB. So that's the slope. If we just found the slope of the side, now we're finding the slope of the perpendicular, because that's the line we want to be using. So the slope that's perpendicular to AB would be negative reciprocal. So 5 over 3, flip it over, change the sign. It goes from negative and it becomes positive. And then the slope perpendicular to AC would be negative 1. Because 1 over 1, the reciprocal is still 1 over 1, but it becomes negative, opposite sign. Step 4 is to find your equations. This is always the longest step, finding your equations. So y minus y1, we want to use the point from 1 and the slope from 3. So point from 1, slope from 3. So y minus y1 equals x, slope times x minus x1. And this one will be y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. Now we go ahead and solve both of these for y. So I'm just going to complete this side and then complete the other one. So y minus 9 equals 5/3 x minus 15. That's negative 9 times 5/3. You can do that in your calculator. And then add 9 to both sides. And I'll get y equals 5/3 x minus 6. And on this side, y minus 7 equals negative x minus 1. This is plus plus, and so when I distribute that negative, it'll be negative 1. And then add 7. So y equals negative x plus 6. Okay, so that's a completion of step 4. Step 5, remember we get rid of the y's and set them equal. So 5/3 x minus 6 equals x plus 6. I add 6 to both sides. Now it's just a one variable equation. 5/3 x equals x plus 12. Subtract x. sorry, that was a negative x right there from the top, negative x, so I'm going to add x. Okay. And again, this negative came down here. I just missed it before. So I'm going to add x to get 8/3 x. And again, use your calculator for 5/3 plus 1 if you need to. 8/3 x equals 12. Divide by 8/3. Again, calculators are perfect here. Make sure you put parentheses around that 8/3 when you divide it in your calculator. And you get x equal to 4.5. Or in your calculator, you might get 9/2, which is also fine. To find y, we plug x back in. So I'm going to use this equation because there's no fractions. So y is equal to negative 4.5 plus 6, which is 1.5. So my final answer would be x comma y, 4.5 comma 1.5. And that would be my circumcenter, or the center of the circumscribed circle. Okay. So again, just follow your steps. Make sure you follow each of the steps that was outlined for you in the notes from yesterday or from Friday. Okay, and follow that through. For our next example, we're going to do an orthocenter. Orthocenters are where we cut through at an altitude. So if I have my same type of triangle, I want it to come from the vertex and be perpendicular. So I'm no longer coming through that midpoint. My midpoint could be off to the side where the perpendicular bisector would cut through. The orthocenter goes through the vertex. Okay, so I'm going to start out with number 1. So the first step for this one is to find the slope of two sides. So again, I'm going to do AB and AC. You can choose whichever side you'd like. So for AB, I'll do x, y minus y over x minus x, 6 minus 2 over negative 2 minus 2. It's going to give me 4 over negative 4, which is negative 1. Then for AC, I'm going to do 2 minus 2 over 2 minus negative 4, which will give me 0 over 6, which is 0. Remember, 0 on the top is 0, 0 on the bottom is undefined. So I have my slopes. Step 2 was to find the negative reciprocals of those slopes. So the slope, and again, we found the side. Now we want to find the perpendicular slope to find this equation of the altitude. So slope of the perpendicular to AB would be positive 1. Remember, we flip it over. So the opposite of negative 1 over 1 would be positive 1 over 1. And the slope perpendicular to AC, the perpendicular to a horizontal is going to be a vertical. So our slope would be undefined. Step 3 is to find our equations. Now, just like when we did the medians, we want to use the point that is not in this slope. So if we used AB for the slope, we want to use C for our point because that's the opposite vertex. So I'm going to write my point down and my slope. And for the other one, I'm going to use, because AC was what I used for my slope, I'm going to use point B for my equation. Okay. And so now I do y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. So y minus 2 equals x plus 4. So y equals x plus 6. That's adding 2 to both sides. And on the other side, I'm going to have an x equals negative 2. Remember, anytime you have a vertical line, you're going to have x equals. And in order to find what x equals, you just look at your point, x, y, and you say, what is my x value? My x value is negative 2. So I say x equals negative 2 is my equation. You can also look at that if you've graphed it. You can also look at where the x value is on your graph. Okay, so my last step on this, step 4, is to solve my system. So y equals, I plug my x in here. Negative 2 plus 6, so y equals 4. So my final would be -2, comma 4x, comma y. So -2, 4 would be the orthocenter of my point. Okay. So again, this was following our steps. Find the midpoint. Find the slope. I'm sorry, not the midpoint. Find the slope. Find the negative reciprocal slope for the perpendicular line. Make the perpendicular line go through the vertex, which is what we want for an altitude, and then solve the system of equations. So we got a system that equaled -2, 4. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to help you after school or any other time that you have time to come by. For your homework, okay, we're going to be finishing up that worksheet with doing, for part B, you want to do number 1 and 2, and for part C, just number 1. So you have 3 questions total. Part B, number 1 and 2, part C, number 1.